Good morning, Rabbi Isaiah. Lili Nishmasimi Morosi Rus Bas Mordechai. Today's Shiur is sponsored in loving memory of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Mנחem ben Reb Leib Ytzchak on his 27th Yhortzeit. Do you imagine? It's 27 years already. It goes like that. May we be zoiche to continue to make him proud and fulfill his ultimate wish, the coming of moshiach Tzidkainu. By Yehuda Zyskind is dedicating today's Shiur in the Zchus in honor of Reb Jay Hellman on his passing the torch as he steps out of as Alumni director of WITS Yeshiva. Reb Jay should have a lot of Brachah, Hatzlachah, and Simcha in his future endeavors. And by Hillel and Ezra Abrams, Ezra from Australia, Lilu Nishmas, our grandfather, on our father's side, Reb Tzvi Hirsch ben Reb Shmuel Olav Shalom. There's a whole arichas here, which I'm not going to read because I can't read by these dedications. But basically, without an education, because he left school when he was 14, he was able to become a very big Talmud Chacham. So if you apply yourself, you can become a Talmud Chacham. And he had a tremendous heart and a big Bal Chesed. The neshama should have an aliyah. Rabbi Isai, last night we had an incredible matzav. Incredible matzav of a, what do you call it? I think I left it in my house. No, I didn't. Here it is. We had a major kumzitz here. The whole pizza situation sponsored by Motti Middeldorf. Here it is. Oh, you can actually see the guy taking the picture in the background here. It's great, which is me, I think. These are the Bachurim, a lot of them. This is Gary's son, unbelievable voice. This is Avi Kamiansky's son, unbelievable voice. These are a bunch of guys. It was a tremendous thing. It picked up. A lot of people left because the shtickle, but then afterwards, you could hear it literally down the block. Tremendous thing. And I want to read to you this email. Brought tears to my eye. And to other people as well, I know for a fact. Dear Reb Eli and the MDY team, I have to write to you. So it started with Shlomi Leitner bumping into Dr. Factor in London. Saw Dr. Factor and he recognized him from the Shiur. Never saw him before in his life. Recognized him, he's wearing the cap. Went over to him. And this is what happened because of this. And this is from Adam Labato from Edgeware, London. I have to write to give Akar Satoiv, as you're the reason I just came back from a wonderful meetup with some of the MDY London Chevra, united through the Daf, and to host our visiting MDY celebrity, Dr. Avi Factor. It was truly like sitting with Mishpacha, all from different backgrounds, Nusachim, some having joined since the start of Brachas, some only recently by Yoma, but the positive energy and excitement was palpable. All discussed how they came to learn the Daf, sharing stories and favorite moments from our favorite Maggid Shiur. I had the honor of picking up Avi Factor and got to schmooze with him. He's a fantastic guy. It is clear he's cut from the similar cloth to Reb Eli, a real credit to MDY. So attaches a picture of myself, Avi Factor, Ari Bloom. This is the very talented Ari Bloom. He writes beautifully for Ara Merkaz. This is Adam Labato, and this is Loz Jacobson. So this is four of them. But then, later on, they decide, okay, let's go to a restaurant. Now, this is very, very important because I received numerous emails, especially from Adam Labato. And here's the whole chevra. L.A. Posen, this is Avi Factor, of course, Jeremy Cohen, Gabriel Emanuel, David Goldberg, Adam Labato, Ari Bloom, and over here is Michael Kashi, and Shlomi Leitner, the guy that met Avi just walking by the palace. But the feeling of the sense of camaraderie, the sense of mishpacha, people walk away from these breakfasts, just these get-togethers on such a high, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. So I don't understand why we're not doing more of it. Last week we had in Teaneck. We had also in Lakewood. No, the cookie corner. So the oil has to get together. That's it. It's enough. Official in Baltimore. We got to do Manchester. We got to start putting these things together. No? It gives them such a chiyus. And these are people, somebody wrote an email, they didn't even know each other. You think, oh, there's London. London's huge. And some of them that knew each other didn't know that they do the daf. So it puts them all together in one little thing. And Avigar Gir, he's watching right now on the plane from 30,000 feet up. He's going to be in Los Angeles. He told me he's going to go. He's going to try to get them together. Harry Shalom, we better get it together. We need to see pictures. Dallas, South Africa. No, Leon, where are you? You got to do these breakfasts. It's unbelievable. I was thinking about this. That when the guys get together in the restaurant, and I'm serious, no, this is very important. Guys get together in a restaurant in London, and the guys get together in a restaurant in Teaneck. This is different than Stam Achdus. This is Achdus with Torah. This is one thing to Fabring. We're all going to get together tonight and have a kumzitz. Okay, shkoyach. Had a kumzitz, very nice. Rig, kipas rugaz, and chasidim, and litvaks. Achdus, very nice. But Achdus through Torah, that we're all connecting through Torah. And a big part of the shmuz is the shiur, and how do you find the shiur? It's Torah, it's Achdus Torah, so on a whole different level. Bring Mashiach, Rabbi, sir, bring Mashiach. Shloimeh Klein. Valdik, and this is from Shloimeh Leitner. Okay. A good Vach Rebelli. I just want to thank you for bringing some important perspective to my life. Last Motzei Shabbos, I felt like a rock star. Oh, you're the famous Shloimeh Klein. It was something I heard quite a few times at the Flatbush get-together. See, Flatbush, they did the get-together. My ego was slightly enlarged, and I felt on top of the world. So along came the guy of the Leo and brought me back down to earth. I was classified as a token Lubavitcher for the first time in my life, and now I know the true meaning of Bitul Hayesh, which I learned so much about in Chasidus. So thank you for this important life lesson. Sincerely yours, your token Lubavitcher, Shloimeh. Shloimeh, I understand you 100%. Let me tell you, many times when I have a high here in the shiur, there's a geshmaki email or something, I come home and my wife is such a mumcha. It's like this. Ma'aseh Shahaya, I'll tell you a true story. In 2005, I bought a property. It was one of the 6 properties called Hunt Club. And this property had green carpets in the bathrooms, carpets in the kitchens. I'm talking about the flooring was a carpet in the bathroom and kitchen. So you can imagine that was my favorite property. No partners, nothing. I took that property on. For 10 years, I worked the property. Turned it into a beautiful property. And the day I sold the property was mamish, tremendous simcha. I sold it for double the price, the purchase price. But that, it's more than making double because you only put down a certain amount. It was a nice profit. I come home and I tell my wife, you could verify the story with my friends from Chicago, with Betsy Friedman and Louis Colm, these guys, or with my wife. I come home, I said, you're not going to believe it. We closed, Baruch Hashem. She didn't even smile. She looked at me, she goes, Eli, can you take out the garbage? I'm not exaggerating. You know why? Because she couldn't care less about money. She doesn't care. If I came home and I said I learned the Daf Gemara, that's it. Money garnished. And the next time, so that was like, wow, it's all the way up here, like that. Next time I sold the property, I didn't even tell her. First of all, because she doesn't care. Second of all, I didn't want to take out the garbage. All right.
Second back.
Who's this? Amazing. Who wrote this book? Who's Nachman Seltzer? Nachman Seltzer. I have Reb Zilberstein on one hand and Reb Nachman Seltzer on the other. Okay. Whoa! Get over here, Nachman. Get over here and say that.
Fighting words.
Wow. Where's this? Where am I reading? On Erev Pesach, in the early 1990s, I had already left the house to burn the chametz together. I happened
to be
Reb Shlomo Zalman's nephew. The two of us were standing in the Zyskind spot, and I was just tired. Okay, fine. So it's the nephew, not the son. You got to be medayik. Rabbi Isai, in your bookstores near you. It's a great. How come? What is this? Yisrael Gelis. Okay, Givaldik. Okay. Today is Daf Samach Gimel. Yeshua, do me a favor. I'm like dried up here. Oh, there's another one here. Shkoyach. Wow. No. Thank you. We are holding 3 lines down from the top on Samach Gimel. We finished off yesterday. We're not going to have time really, but I forgot to mention there's a beautiful, on the final piece, you can be ma'ayin. This whole sugya talks about the door of the oil mayat, open, not open, you bring it to Heichal. So the Rambam says that if you bring a carbon bizman hazeh outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you're chayav on shchita chutz. That's what the Rambam says, because we have a Beis HaMikdash. We have the Mokim HaMikdash. So some want to say, based on this Rambam, you can bring korbanos bizman hazeh, but most Rishonim argue, but it's a nice sugya. Okay. So we finished off that if you bring we were talking about the goats, so Lazazel, and the chatos, and you haven't done the girl yet. No girl yet. Right before the girl, and you go ahead and you take the goat and you shecht it outside the Beis HaMikdash. So before the girl, you're chayav on both. Why? But there's no girl yet. You don't know which one is going to be what. So because it could be a different carbon called the carbon musaf. So that's the concept of hayil. Since it could be something else, you could bring it as a carbon, so you chayav. That's Rav Chizda. Says the Gemara. Umi islay Rav Chizda hayil. Does he in fact believe in that whole concept of hayil? V'amar Rav Chizda. Pesach sheshchotoi b'chutz b'shar yemois hashana l'shmoi patur shaloi l'shmoi chayav. Beautiful. You have a carbon Pesach that you, for whatever reason, didn't bring on Erev Pesach. It got lost. You found it after Pesach. Whatever the reason is, and now you have a carbon Pesach. It's a Shem carbon Pesach. You can't bring it as a carbon Pesach today. So today is Chanukah. Let's call the rest of the year Chanukah. It's Chanukah. And you want to bring a carbon Pesach on Chanukah. Are you over on Shchuti Chutz? No. Because you cannot bring a carbon Pesach on Chanukah. It doesn't work. So if I bring it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, I'm not over. But as we learned in Masechtas Pesachim, a carbon Pesach is be'etzem a shlamim. So if you switch it to a shlamim, and a shlamim belongs in the Beis HaMikdash, you only could shecht it in the Beis HaMikdash, and you shechted it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, now you're chayiv for shchutei chutz, and you get kares. So today's sugya really, it's the next amud and a half. I'm going to break it down. It's very, very simple. You take a carbon Pesach on Chanukah. I call it Chanukah. It's every day of the year, just not on Pesach. Here, Menorah, Chanukah. If you bring it and you have in mind that it's a carbon Pesach, we just learned Shitas Rav Chizda, it doesn't work. But I made it a green X because you don't die. It's like good. The fact that it doesn't work is good for you that it doesn't work. If it works, then it's bad news. You get kares. So if you have in mind shlamim, you get kares. What does Rav Chizda say? You have to think it. You have to decide in your mind that you want to change it into a shlamim. This is automatic. According to Ravin, you don't have to think anything. It switches into a shlamim. It just happens. You don't have to do any maisa. You don't have to think. You don't have to say. So if you bring a carbon Pesach on Chanukah as a shlamim without thinking, forget shlamim, as it is, it becomes a shlamim automatically outside of Beis HaMikdash, and you're chayiv. Whether you did it l'shem Pesach, even if you had in mind, I'm bringing a carbon Pesach right now. Too bad. Your carbon Pesach just flipped into a shlamim because it's not Pesach anymore. It's auto. And Rav Dimi says something very similar to auto. Auto happens only inside the Beis HaMikdash. You have to be inside the Beis HaMikdash. If you're not inside the Beis HaMikdash, it doesn't flip. You can never flip. You can't even say that you're flipping it. You have to be inside the Beis HaMikdash. That's the whole amud and a half now. That's it. Let's see it inside.
The question, the first possibility that
What does it mean that it's holy?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah. You designate it as a Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is in the category of a shlamim. And now you flipped into a shlamim. It's not chulin. Oh, you didn't do anything?
Or it's called Pesach for Pesach, and in the meantime it's not.
No, you can't. It can't be chulin because it's a carbon. You designate it as a carbon. It can't be chulin. How is it going to become chulin? Why is it potter? Because it's not roy. You took something that's not. It's not possible right now. Let's see. We'll see in the sugya. I think you'll have more understanding as we get through it. So let's see these words again. You take a Korban Pesach and you shecht it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, not on Erev Pesach, after Pesach. Lishmoi, if you have in mind that it's a Korban Pesach, and it is a Korban Pesach potter. Why? Because today is not Pesach. So you did zero. You can't bring a Korban Pesach on Chanukah. Shaloi lishmoi chayav. However, if you thought to yourself that it's a shlamim, and a Korban Pesach is in the category of shlamim, and you switched it, so according to Rav Chizda, you have to switch it, so you're chayav. Ask the Gemara, bam kashel achayra. Taima, the shaloi lishmoi, hastama, lishmoyu potter. It's because you said, I'm doing a Korban Pesach, and if you say, I'm doing a Korban Pesach on Chanukah, you're potter. What if you didn't say anything? You didn't say Pesach, you didn't say Shlam, nothing. You just brought it as is. Seems like potter. But over here we have the concept of royu. You could bring it as a shlamim. You could. This animal right in front of you is a Korban Pesach that if you wanted to, you could say that it's a shlamim and bring it inside the Beis Hamikdash as a shlamim, and it would work as a shlamim. So why are you potter? Rav Chizda said that if you take an animal, you take a goat that didn't have a ladder yet, you're chayiv if you shecht it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Why? Because you could bring it as a musaf. So over here also, you could bring it as a shlamim. So you should be chayiv. There's a tremendous nafkamina between the two cases. What's the nafkamina? Says the Gemara. What's the connection? Hasam by Korban Pesach bayakira. You need to switch. It's a Korban Pesach, and you must switch it to a Korban Shlamim. And if you don't switch it, it remains a Korban Pesach. Hi, loy bayakira. This goat of Yom Kippur that you want to make it into a Korban Musaf, you don't need to switch it. You just bring it as a Musaf. As is, it's roy for. They're both chatas. What's a sire? A sire that you bring from the two goats. One gets pushed off the mountain. One is a chatas. It's a chatas. And what's a musaf? The musaf is a chatas. So Mela, they're both in the same category. Rabbi Shimi, Master Luke, the Rabba, Vikashla, the Rabba. Okay, the Gemara is not saying any chiddush here. The Gemara is just saying that switch the name Rav Chizda to Rabba. They were contemporaries. This whole story of Rav Chizda saying Hoyel, and then we ask a question of Rav Chizda, Rav Chizda doesn't hold Hoyel. It's Rabba says Hoyel, and then Rabbi doesn't hold of Hoyel because Rabbi just said this halacha by Korban Pesach, and the story. Okay. Vikashla, the Rabba, and he asked the question, Umishanik in the Shaninon, and the answers, it's just basically all the Gemara is saying, take out the word Rav Chizda, put in the name Rabba. Now Rav Dimi comes along. Rav Dimi in the name of Rav Yochanan and Ravin in the name of Rav Yochanan, they're both saying, I heard from our Rebbe the exact opposite. Okay, that's how all these machlekes start. They heard it. They heard the exact reverse. Rav Dimi said they're both the same. Whether you think you have a Korban Pesach, it's in a Chanukah now, whether you're thinking that it's a Pesach, whether you think it's a Shlamim, it's both the same. And Ravin said it's both the same, but it works. And Rav Dimi says it doesn't work. Then what? If you shech the Korban Pesach, not on Pesach, bein l'shmoi, whether you think to yourself that it's a Korban Pesach, bein shaloi l'shmoi, whether you think to yourself that I'm bringing a Korban Shlamim, potter. You're completely potter. Look at this. It doesn't work, and you're potter. Because if you think to yourself that I'm bringing a Korban Pesach on Chanukah, Everybody knows you can't bring a carbon Pesach on Chanukah, so therefore you are potter from kares. It's not considered bringing a carbon outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Hello, by the way, we're having a few days, sugyas like this, and then it's 20 days straight of just agadat and geshmaka, back to Yoma stuff. So some people really enjoy these sugyas, I'm serious, they really do. And some people are waiting for those agatas. So whoever you are, you know what's, but this is not difficult. But if you in your head said, I'm bringing a shlamim, so shouldn't that work? Shouldn't it be usher and you should be chayiv kares outside the Beis Hamikdash? You could bring a shlamim inside the Beis Hamikdash, and the fact that you decided to bring it outside the Beis Hamikdash, you should be chayiv. And he explained, it has to be done inside the Beis Hamikdash. Where do you bring a carbon shlamim? Where do you bring carbon Pesach and the shlamim? In the Beis Hamikdash. That's where the only place you can make that switch. You can't make that switch in Chicago. You have to be in the Beis Hamikdash to do that switch. Ravin said in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, who also Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Pesach sheshchati b'chutz b'shar yimais hashana bein l'shmoi bein shalei l'shmoi chayav. The exact opposite. Even if you shecht a carbon Pesach, l'shem carbon Pesach on Chanukah, you chayav kares outside of Beis Hamikdash. V'afilu l'shmoi. Even if you think that it's a carbon Pesach, you can't bring a carbon Pesach in the middle of the year. Basnan mechusar zman bein begufay bein bebailim. Mechusar zman means the typical mechusar zman of the Torah is Torah says you can only bring a carbon when an animal is 8 days old. It has to be a minimum of 8 days old. So if you bring an animal when he's 3 days old, it's mechusar zman. It's missing the time. You have to wait 5 days for it to mature. So if it's missing time, there must be a better way to say it in English. Missing, premature. Okay. Whether it's in the animal itself that it's not 8 days old, or or the owner is missing some time. Let's say, as the Gemara is going to explain, he needs a kapara, and the kapara takes 7 days, and he's on day 3, so he's not ready for this carbon. What does it mean? Hazav. It's a whole process. He has to go purify himself, go to the mikvah, 7 days. Va'azava. Va'hayuledes. A woman, depends. Zachar, nekeva, 40 days, 80 days, wherever it is. Let's say she's waiting for 40 days, and on day 20 she decides to bring her karbanis, her 2 birds. Or if she's waiting 80 days, she comes on day 70. Va'amet tzayra, again, the whole process. 7 days. They brought the chatos and asham outside of the Beis Hamikdash before their time. So let's say in Mitzayra, you have to wait 7 days, and he jumps the gun on day 3 and he brings his chatos outside. Mitzayra has to bring a chatos asham and oila. Yeah, one of his korbanos, he goes and shechts it in Rechavia somewhere, not in the Beis Hamikdash. What? On the 8th day. He has to bring it on the 8th day. 7 days of Tahara, 8th day. He brings it earlier. Potter. Why is he potter? The same thing you hear as he left. It's like a carbon Pesach on Chanukah. It doesn't work. The carbon doesn't work. You can't bring a carbon Asham from Mitzayra on day 3. It's not. It didn't start. Okay, they discuss. So the Shlom, the Gemara over there discusses Shlom is not really for here. That's for a, not a Mitzayra, what's the other guy? No, like a Mitzayra, like a Mitzayra? No. A Nazir, thank you. Nazir, thank you. Nazir. Okay, Lo Mishaneh. But let's say, if you bring an Oila is different. Oila you can bring any day of the year. Independent of you have to bring an Oila. Or let's say you're a Nazir, not mentioned in the Gemara, you have to bring a Shlamim. Right? A Nazir has to bring a Shlamim, you burn the hair under the pot, the whole thing. But he has to wait X amount of days. He has to wait until he becomes tar. But let's say he brought it today, and you can still bring a Shlamim today. Let's say you have to bring an Oila for whatever your Tahara is. You have to bring an Oila. But I can bring oila every day of the week. even before I become tar. So now I'm chayiv. Because my oila has nothing to do with me becoming tar. I could bring an oila every day of the week, but I cannot bring a chatos every day of the week. Chatos is very specific to an aveira, which I didn't do, or I'm a mitzayir and I'm bringing a chatos, but I have to wait until I become tar. I can't bring a chatos 3 days earlier. Oila I could. So if I bring that oila outside of the Beis Hamikdash, I'm chayav. It might be kedai to remember his name. Lo yishanu. Now he's focusing in on the asham. Lo yishanu, this asham, ela lishmoi. Ava shaloi lishmoi chayav. Why? So, no, asham. Asham. Lo yishanu ela lishmoi. So if you took an asham, listen what happened there. Beautiful thing here. This is the first Mishnah of Masechtas Zvachim. Famous Mishnah. The whole Masechtas Zvachim basically goes off this Mishnah. If you take a carbon asham and you flip it to an oila, it doesn't work for the guy that needs to bring an asham, but it's a good oila. You continue, you bring it onto the mizbeach. So what happened here was he had to bring an asham. But what if he flips it and he makes it an oila? So now it'd be chayiv for shchut chutz, because it works. If you bring a carbon pesach on Chanukah, it doesn't work. You did nothing. You took a carbon pesach and you brought it on Chanukah, and you did a zero. You get a big fat zero. So if you did a zero, you don't get a misa for it. But if you take an asham, and the only way I could bring this asham is when I am on my 8th day. And it's right now on the 3rd day. So I say, you know what? But I want to be a rush anyway. So let me switch it to an oila. That works to a point. It's a good oila. So for that, I brought an oila. On day 3, I'm chayiv misa. Because I brought it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Lishmoi mi patur. Now listen to this chap. That's the Gemara, beautiful chap. You're telling me that if I had in mind I'm going to flip my asham to oila, I get misa. So what if I didn't flip it? I should also get misa. Why? Hayil. I could. If I felt like it, I could. So for that could, I should be chayiv misa. Just like we said, if I take a goat in the Beis Hamikdash that didn't have a lottery yet, and I bring it as a karban, I'm chayiv. Why? Because I could bring it as a musaf. So there also, I could take the asham and flip it to ayla. I should be chayiv. Amai, name a hayel, urun shlish bifnim. Says the Gemara, hachi ashta. Again, same kind of idea. Hasam by Akira. This asham, you can't just say, since I could bring it as ayla, but I didn't bring it as ayla. And in order to bring it as ayla, you have to make a flip, and you have to make a physical flip. And I didn't do that. Masha Enkin in our sugya, when I have this animal that didn't have a lottery, I don't have to do a physical flip. I just take it and move it over here and bring it as a musaf. It's a chatas already. A chatas remains a chatas. Over here I need to take the asham and create a shlamim out of an asham that you don't say hayil to. You don't say since it could be a ayla. But it's not. Today it's an asham. So I'm not chayiv if I bring it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Hacha, Pesach b'shar Yom Shana, shlamim ninu. Oh, we're not talking about the Yom Kippur, it's talking about Pesach. Okay. Oh, but he's saying that it happens automatically, no? Okay. Because carbon Pesach is really a shlamim. Deep down, it's a shlamim. Yeah. But hold on, hold on a second. Yeah, exactly. Because he holds it happens by itself. Here. He's auto. He holds automatic that a Pesach flips into a shlamim. Before we were talking about that you have to do it. And that's why it's missing a step. But over here it happens automatically. So Pesach is a shlamim, and in Mela, you say hayil. Ravashi masna chayav kidigamrinon. Ravashi learns in Ravin chayav. You see, like these checks, you chayav misa because it does work, because it happens automatically. Rav Yirmiyah v'divdi masni potter in Ravin. Rav Yirmiyah learns in Ravin like this. So in other words, Ravin and Rav Dimi are saying the same thing. So there's no machlokes. Kosav arpezah v'shayim mois hashana boyakira v'akira Zchus lavshma akira. It has to only be inside the Beis Hamikdash, like Rav Dimi said. So Ravin, there's no machlokes according to Rav Yirmiyah Medifti. Okay. Upliga the Rav Chilgir Batoivi. Zok the Gemara. Kosav v'shana boyakira akira Zchus lavshma akira. Upliga the Rav Chilgir Batoivi. Okay. He's saying there's no machlokes. Omar Mar. We learned yesterday. Mishehigril, once the girl of the two sheep happened, of the two goats happened, Mishehigril aleim chayiv al shel shem upotter al shel azazel. One goat goes off a cliff. One goat becomes a carbon. So therefore, if I bring the goat that's a carbon outside of Beis Hamikdash, I'm chayiv. But if I bring the goat that is supposed to be thrown off a cliff and I shecht him outside of the Beis Hamikdash, not chayiv. Torah Rabban, how do I know this? Torah Rabban. Ishish mir Beis Yisrael asher yishchat shor kesef oy eis b'machne oy asher yishchat mechutz lamachne. Whole arichas here in the pasuk about shchutei chutz, about being chayiv if you bring an animal that's supposed to be a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash, outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'ol pesach oy moed lo yivio lahakriv carbon l'Hashem. So it says mefurish in the pasuk it has to be roi to come l'Hashem inside the Beis Hamikdash. Samach Gimel Amud Beis sponsored Lili Nishmas Uri Ben Mattisyahu, and for the success and gashmis and especially ruchnis of his grandchildren. Carbon. If we would just say the word carbon, Shemiani Afilu Kachi Bedekabai Shinikru carbon. You have all these animals that are designated for the Beis Hamikdash, not to bring on the mizbeach, but to take care of the Beis Hamikdash, the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, the Bedekabayis. Those are also called carbon. The pasuk calls them a carbon, even though you're not going to literally bring it as a carbon. Shinikru carbon, kin yishenema, ben nakriv is carbon Hashem. So, how do I know that you're not chayiv on shchutei chutz? I grab, somebody donated 10 animals to the Beis Hamikdash for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. Sell off an animal and go paint the wall. I take that animal and I shecht him outside in Rechavia. I'm not chayiv kares. Why? But the Torah calls it a carbon. I just shechted a carbon in Rechavia. No. This is a little bit difficult. I'm not going to tell you I understand it, because Rashi has a little bit of a trouble here. In the beginning, Rashi says, maybe the pshat is, it has a mum. A lot of these animals are bali mum. Rashi doesn't like that. But Rashi is saying, at the end of the day, it's not designated to go to the base, because it's difficult. You could bring it as a carbon. The Gemara is saying it's not roy lepesach. It's not roy. It's a different kind of roy over here. It's not designated to go to the Beis Hamikdash, to the mizbeach. It's designated to sell off and do something with it. So I'm going to exclude. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's a little. We need Rashi. That's why the best pshat would be that they're all bali mumim. Okay, but Rashi doesn't like it. The Roiv, he doesn't say all. He says Roiv. He starts stam koche bedek abayis bali mumim. But he doesn't like it. He knows that it's a little bit. It's tricky. Oitzi elu shein ruim lepesach oil moed v'lo oitzi, and he takes out. Rashi takes out paras chatas. V'sara mishtalech shu roy loyvoy. So maybe you should be chayiv shchutei chutz on this Sarah Mishtaleach, the one that gets thrown off the cliff. Hashem comes to exclude it. It's mimayit. Hashem is a mir here. Mi shemiyuchadim Lashem. And Mamela, you're not chayiv for shchitas chutz. You take this goat that's supposed to be thrown off the cliff. You take him outside and you shecht him. You're not chayiv. Yhortzeit Hashem yuchadim Hashem. Ask the Gemara a simple question. You tell me the word Hashem comes to exclude. I have a place that's marba. It includes Viriminu. It's talking about the pasuk over here is talking about an animal that's less than 8 days old, but you have to be 8 days old. And it says, "Yhortzeit l'karban ishal Hashem Elu Ishim. In order to put it on the fire, it has to be at least 8 days old. How do you know you shouldn't make it a carbon? You shouldn't take a baby animal, just born, 3 days old, carbon. Talmud Loimar, carbon. This is a little tricky. I read it 3 times until I have how to read it. Talmud Loimar, carbon, not carbon Lashem. Carbon, you have to stop. You have to put a hard stop over here. The word carbon tells me, do not make this baby a carbon until it's 8 days old. The word Lashem, lirabois. Okay, so that's the question. A second ago we said Lashem is a miot, and over here Lashem is a riboy. That what? Sarah mishtaleach. That you should not make the goat. You hear this? A goat that you push off a cliff has to be at least 8 days old. How do I know from this pasuk? The same pasuk that tells me you can't bring a carbon that's less than 8 days old. Sarah mishtaleach also has to be 8 days old. Okay. The bottom line is, you see that the word Lashem is a riboy, not a miot. Amarava. The word Lashem could go either way depending on the pasuk. It's parav. Hasam and Yanadikra, Vacham Yanadikra. Hasam the Pesach the rabbis. The whole pasuk is talking about a riboy. Lashem lahaitzi. So therefore Lashem because we might. Hacha di shalaitzi. The whole pasuk is a miut Lashem the rabbis. Taima the Rabbi Rachmana. Holei Rabbi Avamina Sar Mishtalech Kodesh b'mechusar zman. If the pasuk didn't say that I cannot bring a 3-day-old goat, so I think I can bring a 3-day-old goat, throw him off the cliff. Ask the Gemara bomb question. What's the question? How could you bring a 3-day-old goat? Before you push it off the cliff, it has to go through the process of a lottery. And it cannot go through a process of lottery when it's 3 days old, because what if it comes out to be the chatas guy? And a chatas cannot be 3 days old, it has to be 8 days old. So it can't even be part of the lottery. So what's the Gemara's answer? The Gemara's going to come up with 3 answers there. It's in a very specific case that you don't need a lottery. If you don't need a lottery, you understand? It works. If you don't need a lottery, the Torah has to tell me, make sure it's 8 days old. Why? Let's say I brought an animal and I switched out another animal in there, according to one man Amar. The first animal that was supposed to be thrown off the cliff dies, so I throw in another animal instead of it. Maybe I could bring, now I don't need a lottery, because I just replaced that animal, and now I would think he could be 3 days old. Kamashmal in the pasuk, it has to be 8 days old. That's the teretz of the Gemara. Now, what's the kasha? Let's see inside. Vo'ein, ask the Gemara, but if without the pasuk, without the miut, have amina sar mishtalech kadosh b'mechusar zman, I could bring a goat that gets thrown off the cliff, b'mechusar zman, meaning less than 8 days old. It's premature. But you can't make a lottery in such a guy because it has to be roy just in case it falls out that this baby, 3-day-old baby, is the chatos. You have to be able to shech the chatos, and he's 3 days old. You can't. Yes, you're right. Typically, it doesn't work. But in a specific case, according to Chanan HaMitzri, I do have a case. This is Anya. Chanan HaMitzri Omer, afilu dam bakois. Let's say I did the goyrel, and I shechted the chatos, and I have the blood of this chatos, and the sa'ir la'azazel dies. Maybe chaveiroi mezavig loy, says Chanan HaMitzri, you don't have to redo the lottery. You just bring another goat in there, and you say, this goat is instead of the sa'ir hamishtalech that died. And memela, here's a case, I don't need a lottery. Your whole question was, how do I do a lottery? It's not roy, da-da-da. You don't need a lottery. And he's 3 days old. And memela, the pasuk has to tell me, yes, a 3-day-old is possible. Says the Gemara, it's not a good example. Chanan HaMitzri never said you don't have to do a lottery. All Chanan HaMitzri said is, I can use the blood of the chatas goat. But I need to do a lottery. I have to take 2 new goats. Listen to what happens here. 2 new goats. And I decide, okay, goat A is Lazazel, goat B is a chatas. But then I don't shech the chatas. Why? Because I already shech the chatas before, and I already have the blood in a cup. So I get rid of the chatas guy, I let him graze, whatever, and the Azazel guy, I throw off a cliff. But don't tell me that there's no goyrel. Chanan HaMitzri never said there's no goyrel. There is a goyrel. So again, once again, the question is, if there's a goyrel, then what's the case that I could use a baby goat that's less than 8 days old, and I need a pasuk to tell me that it doesn't work? I have to do a goyrel, and without the pasuk, I know I can't do it because he's too young for a goyrel. The less that girl, Mishamas like Dilma Maisu Magril. Maybe according to Chanan HaMitzri, there is a girl. It's just a Dilma. Maybe you have to do it. Elam Rav Yosef, I have another man. Domar. Amani Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon holds you don't need a girl. The Sanya. Maybe Chaveira Shaloi Bahagrola. He says straight out with his mouth. Reb Shimon holds if I already did a lottery and the Sar Lazazel drops dead, bring another goat. He should be instead of the one that died without a lottery. Maybe I could bring a 3-day-old. That's why the pasuk says, in that specific case, you cannot bring a 3-day-old. But a typical case, I don't need a pasuk because I cannot do a lottery. In a typical case where I need a lottery, I don't need a pasuk because you can't do a lottery on a 3-day-old. The Reb Shimon, Ravina Omar, another pshat. This guy already, there's a girl. The lottery is done. And the Sar Lazazel gets a big boo-boo. That he's a balmum. So I get rid of him. But how do I get rid of him? I take another goat and I say this goat should be instead of the first goat. So the girl, the lottery that I did on the first goat, goes into goat number 2. So I don't need to do a girl. So I could take a 3-day-old, theoretically, and say this 3-year-old should be instead of this guy with the big boo-boo, with the broken leg, the balmum, and the 3-day-old becomes a Sar Lazazel, and the girl goes into him. Tzmur is not a good word. Chilul. He's mechalalit. He takes the kedusha from here, puts it into the baby. Like a tmura, yeah. But tmura is when a person does something illegal. This is legal. And how do you know that a mum, you hear this? This Sar Lazazel in 10 seconds is flying off the cliff. You know how many broken bones he's going to have? He's going to die. It's a pretty big mum to die. So how do you know that you can't throw a Sar Lazazel that has a mum on it? The Sanya v'ishe lo yisitnu mehem. You cannot take a balmum and then make it a carbon. So what the pasuk says, the Gemara says, Elu achalavim. You can't take from the balmum and take the chelav and be makriv it. Ein kulan. Can't take all of it. Some of it. How do you know? Tamaloyim mehem from them. Mizbeach zuzrikas dam. You can't do any zrikas dam from a balmum. La Hashem. Here we go. La Hashem. Le rabbis sar hamishtalayach. That when the one that goes off a cliff cannot be a balmum. You learn from the pasuk of mum. V'yitzrich and the Sar Lazazel. I need 2 psukim. The one that goes off the cliff cannot have a mum and cannot be less than 8 days old. He's not even in the parsha. He's not 8 years old. He's not even a carbon yet. Maybe if he's old enough to be a carbon, just he has a little bit of a mum, maybe you could bring him. It's a disgusting thing. It's kilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not. He doesn't favor that animal. So maybe that's why he can't bring it. In a few days he's going to be old enough. So right now it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't like it. Tzricha. Let's just do 2 more lines here. Top of Samach Dam Amud Aleph. Rav Omar Kigoin, beautiful. You have an animal. Listen to this. You have an animal that you could bring. It's a great case. You could bring this animal right now. You could bring makriv it. It's 8 days old. You know what happened? They shechted its mother that day. On Yom Kippur, they shechted the mother. Why did they shecht the mother? Either the guy was a Russia, or if you want to say he was a tzaddik, he shechted the mother for a chayla, shesh b'sakana. So now, all of a sudden, he was in a lottery. You said, push him off the cliff. And you can't push him off the cliff. You know why? Because he just shechted his mother 15 minutes ago. And you're not allowed to shecht a mother and a daughter in the same day. As the Gemara, you're not shechting this animal, you're throwing him off the cliff. That's what everybody's shaking their head. They all had the question, right? Says the Gemara, no, you should know this is called the shechita. That's considered a shechita. It's a tremendous insight. It kind of throws a wrench into a lot of things that we learned today. But throwing it off a cliff is considered shchita, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Shir Ma'alois Me'okim Simcha Adonai. Adonai Shema B'Koili, Din Azal Keshavai, Zikol Lachem Noi. Im Aviris Shema Yad Adonai Amoy. Im Chas Yichol Mati Kovei. Wie sagt Adonai Gifson Nafshil V'Oy Cholti. Nafshil Adonai Mishemur Laboyke Shemur Laboyke. This is Adonai Gifson. אחרי גם זה סלק מסור מסור. אבל נבין ביום שרוק מנחם ניסים צור שטוב בזמן קרוב ליבם. Now I like you have enough from that joke. The garbage.
Here's one place where me and you have a difference in how we, the humor we like.
No, but you like the joke.
It was a good line. It was good. You built it well. The timing was good. It was delivered very well.
It was just not appropriate.
I don't like my family.
How's everybody doing?
Depends who you ask. Really pizza.
Depends who you ask. That's a good message.
Last night. There was free rides from Jerusalem. We had like maybe 15 people from different cities. It's crazy last night.
No one told me beforehand.
Yeah, Robbie, you could have told me. I would have come in.
It wasn't in our Americas.
Yeah, you have to put an ad in the Our America.
No, there was somebody Pashkas put on the. He told me put on the chat that he's going and he has room.
I didn't see it till later.
Jam packed last night. It was like in the good old days, not almost like the good old days, almost. Another 20 people would have been there. Like we had 80 people last night.
Did you have any shirayim left over?
Pizza?
Yeah.
I want you to send it to Barbara.
There's actually 2 pies extra. They took them home.
That's very nice.
Nice, them being Jews.
That's the thing. I'm serious. We have to think how to get these get-togethers because the guys love it. It really lifts people up. It gives them a chios. So I have to figure out how to do it on a more.
Nechemia said he's coming to Muncie on Monday, so we're going to try to do something.
Who's coming? Nechemia?
Nechemia.
Don't, we have to confirm it. I can't.
I'm committing you to it.
Too much pressure.
Give the guy a
Actual workout. Oh man. Yeah, that should work
listen,
out.
you guys, the Muncie, the Lakewood, we're good. Other places, we need to see it in Baltimore. We need to see it in other places.
I was just there. What?
In
I was just
Baltimore.
there.
You went to Nachum Horowitz.
Aaron, who's driving the car?
I'm coming back now. I'm on the way back. I spent Shabbos with him.
Aaron,
Okay,
who's
we're
driving the
all
car?
flying Thursday. We're all flying to Harry Shalom. We're gonna have dinner with Harry Shalom on Thursday night.
I
don't wear a mask in
You
LA
guys want
still.
to come.
Why
I'm
turn
telling
out
you,
that
you guys want to come. He's not going to let you.
Oh,
I want to see what
Harry
Avi got here. I want to see Avi got here.
Go sleep. Can we do something in the mornings instead?
Ellie.
Does Shabbos go out
Hey,
again
Dr.
in
Mark.
LA?
Where's Dr.
Yeah,
Mark?
he's done.
Not
Harry's
today?
out Shabbos.
Let me see if I see him.
Dr. Mark
he
was
on?
out at Shoshana. He's out. There he is.
There he is. You're muted.
He's waving. You're muted,
On
Doc.
the wrong screen, maybe.
Mark,
No,
I
he's
brought back
listed
something good
he's a-
for our
Shoshana,
guests.
he's
Let's have
listed
an
as.
LA get together. Everyone goes down to LA. We have to
I
be
have-
careful
I
not
have-
to stay
I
there too
brought back
long, otherwise
something
we
good.
get stuck. You have
Yeah,
to.
you
You
Ellie-
can't stay
Ellie,
there
you
past
see
midnight,
Dr. Mark?
otherwise-
Nope.
Dr. Mark, you want to wave again?
He's listed as Shoshana.
Oh,
Don't look
here.
for Dr. Mark.
No, I got it. Okay, you threw me off there.
I'll
I got it.
spotlight him.
How's it going? How's the job? How's Barnosa? It's good? Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Okay, great. Awesome.
We just put him on the WhatsApp group so he knows about the next TNET gathering.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like these groups have to be stronger, better, and there should be like a
The
consistent.
localized
once a
groups are
month.
good. The
Once a
localized
month.
groups are good because there's not a lot of chat on it, but it's
Yeah,
only
Mark.
tacos.
Mark.
Yeah, but somebody in each city has to take it by the horn.
Jackson.
Mark, you're the best. Don't worry.
I got
Well,
it.
I'm
Doc.
gonna head out.
I'm used to Harry Shalom when he can't talk. We know when somebody can't talk, we understand.
We got it.
Whatever.
Rebelli,
Yeah.
By the way, Rebelli,
I hope to include you in your future get-togethers. I brought back something special from Baltimore. Mנחem sent me back with something big.
No.
No, not the
Hey,
bobblehead?
not the
$1
cutout.
million idea.
now. Our next get together, you'll be there with us.
You
got the cutout was by the
It's a little
seal of
creepy.
her
It's a
Stalin.
little creepy. I'm telling you. I'll tell you the truth.
Did you at least take off the mask this time?
No. I gotta get another one without a maskless, Rebelli.
Nah, guys, it's thanks to COVID that we have this. If it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have close to what we have now. We wouldn't have like a community kind of thing. Mishpoche.
You're right.
You have to think of that. We wouldn't have Zoom. We would still be on YouTube. We would never go back. We would never go into Zoom.
We gaan nog met de stramel met de Shabbos.
Which way?
What are you blabbering about Stramelig? Stramelig only for Chassidim.
You didn't see Rebelli, his double was there with his stramel on.
That's not called a Stramel. That is not called a Stramel.
Rebelli,
That is called
you said
a
about the
compact,
garbage.
not a Stramel. Sorry.
I want to tell him, Rebelli, you said about the garbage.
Yeah.
You know the story with the young couple?
As a matter of fact,
the guy went to Rav Gifter, the Rebbe to Rav
Yeah,
Gifter.
of course.
Yeah, I'm heading out. You guys have a great day.
Take care, Nehemiah.
Yo, Aaron,
That's why I go.
come see me in J2. Come
I
to
see a lot of guys taking
J2.
out the garbage in the neighborhood. I go, good morning, I'm Gifter. Good morning. That's the thing.
Bye, people.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Rebelli, what happened with the recording of you speaking to the Rebbe? I know every stone heard it already.
Oh my gosh, I can't. You know, you want to hear something crazy? I called up a guy. I said, I want to buy your house. Like, it's for sale. I've seen it a bunch of times. And then he says, oh, I don't want to sell it. So I called him up. I'm like, what's going on here? He goes, what's your name? I said, Eli Stefansky. He goes, oh, you're the one that spoke to the Rebbe. Like, it's crazy.
Did it become for sale once you knew your name?
You know what? I'm going to show it tomorrow, and that's it. Because I was waiting for the secret system in the Beis Medrash, and they only installed one. And they're missing 3. I don't even know why, but I'm just going to have Gary hook it up to the TVs, and I'm going to show it tomorrow. You heard it. What's the difference? You already heard it, no?
Ellie.
I knew, but the mind said everybody else didn't.
You know what's funny? Shmuley, you know what's funny? Some Karlina Chassid wrote me an apology letter. He goes, first I cursed out this guy that was speaking to the Rebbe. I thought that he was insulting the Rebbe. And then I realized that the guy insulting the Rebbe is my Rebbe also. I learned Daf Yomi from him every single day. So I found out what's going on. A guy made a scam. He called up the Kalina Rebbe and he asked him all these funny questions, and then he publicized it and he made the Rebbe look, I don't know, something like that. So they thought I was doing the same thing.
Right, so that's why everybody was scared about it.
Yeah, but then they heard, I said specifically, I am recording the Rebbe. I said specifically. And I spoke with a lot of respect, I think. And I think whoever listens carefully sees that I was being serious. Anyway, no? Shmuley didn't come across like that?
Nachas time.
You're not.
Yeah, exactly, Eli Chopper. You're right. Chakras time.
Yeah, I gotta go. All right.
Thank you,
guys,
that's
have a
hard.
great day. Have a great day.
Have a great day, Rebelli. Great day.
Take care, Rebelli.
We might see you on Friday. Oh, God.